Hi, welcome to the B&H Event Space. I'm Marco Catini. This presentation is going to be on the art of storytelling. Thank you very much to B&H for offering this opportunity. I love talking, and actually I love to take photos and I love talking about it. Yeah, let's get it started. This is me. This is usually the boring part, so let's get it quick. Born and raised in Switzerland. I live in New Jersey, so if you hear a weird accent, that's why. I mainly work as a second photographer at weddings. That's my main source of income. I do a lot of corporate events, and I do marketing materials. I volunteer a lot for Special Olympics New Jersey, Special Olympics USA in North America, and also for the Valerie Fund. One of the questions that, before I start talking about storytelling, is what is a story? And a story, defined by dictionary.com, is a narrative, either true or fictitious, in prose or verse, designed to interest, amuse, or instruct the hearer or reader. So a story can be a tale, and a story can be either a short story or a novel. I'll make some comparisons to writing in my photos afterwards, so I'll try to pick up that theme. These are some photos that I would call are my short stories, taken during events and where I just see something interesting on the side happening, and I think they're more interesting than just a snapshot, or more interesting than the regular sports photo. So I like to do this at sports events, at weddings, where I think that this type of photo is much more signifying than the classic post-family photo, or when I do some personal projects, where I think that just tells a lot without telling too much. And I'll just dig into my first ever story that I photographed. This is about Michael. I was at a point where I was somewhat bored with my photography and wanted to do something new, and I decided, how about I do a longer project? A friend of a friend has a child who has intellectual disabilities, who is in Special Olympics. His name is Michael, as you probably guessed. And I decided that I want to photograph a day in his life, because there's so much about somebody with different abilities that we don't know, that we're not aware of. So I asked a friend if I could photograph her kid. She said yes. And in order to get to know him better before I spent a day with him, sticking my camera in his face, I decided to photograph him at the Special Olympics USA Games in 2014. I had no clue what Special Olympics was then. This was my first exposure to Special Olympics. And as you can tell, I was a bit heavy-handed on the editing then with HDR and all that stuff. I did learn a few things, not to say a lot of things, but this was the gold medal game at the Newark Stadium, not Newark, Trenton Thunder, which is a New York Yankees AAA team. So I photographed Michael as they won that game, won medals. This was the first baseball tournament in Special Olympics history. So some of these photos are in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Before photographing Michael, that's his mom, obviously. Before photographing Michael, I asked his mom, is there anything I should not be doing, saying? Should I not use flash? Or what is his condition? Are there any triggers? And she never really answered those questions, which now I think, oh, that was pretty darn good on her side, because I got into photographing him without any preconceived notions. And that's something that I had prepared for it. I tried to prepare for photographing him for a day. I had something in my head, as in, this is how the day is going to be, this is how it's going to run. And as I started taking these photos, this is about 3 months later, 3 weeks later, at their home, he's getting up. I decided to photograph him as he gets up to going to school, just spend a day, the whole day. And I start taking photos of him, and he's always smiling, always looking at the camera. And his mom looks at him and says, Michael, stop looking at Marcus. Stop saying hello, stop smiling at him. And his answer was, well, but that's rude. And that pretty much told me what kind of person he is. And also that he's pretty much telling me where this day is going. It's any ideas I had of a photo list of whatever, that was just not going to happen. This is in the morning getting ready for the school bus. He always listens to music, taking a quick nap before the school bus gets in. I was only allowed to take a quick photo of inside the school bus. I wasn't allowed to ride in it, insurance issues. And once we got to the school, I decided to take photos of the school, try to figure out what's going on, set the scene, set the environment. This is during summer break, so the school as such is closed. There's only a couple of classes going on with special needs kids. And with this being my first story I ever photographed, I think you can see how it's not very consistent. Sometimes there's a lot of things that are repetitive, and that's okay. That's going to happen. Whenever you try something new, you figure out some things that don't work, but you have to figure that out on your own. Also, one of the things that I learned is be respectful and don't photograph when you shouldn't. So here, he's talking to his therapist. He was okay with me being in that room. I just didn't feel okay with it. I think that's, on one hand, it's too intrusive. On the other hand, I don't get any new photos that will help to the visual quality of the story. One thing that I learned is, that was on a Tuesday, when you're at the cafeteria ordering food with the students, order what they order, a ham and Swiss sandwich, not tacos, even though it's Taco Tuesday. You see why he's laughing at me. Another thing I learned, and this is, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I had those preconceived notions. This was during an arts and crafts project that they were doing, and the teacher was handing out school and scissors. And my head went, you can't give people with intellectual disabilities glue and scissors. And oh yes, you can. I was so completely wrong. That showed me that unless we get exposed to something, unless we experience something, we don't really know, which was the underlying idea of me doing this story for myself. Because it's summer break, they're helping the maintenance department. He's always listening to music. They had some games in the end. And after that, we went to physical therapy. He has issues with his ankles. I don't know if you noticed with the braces he's wearing the whole time. So here, the therapist asked him if he did his exercises at home. I guess you know the answer. He really does not like doing exercises. Once he was on the treadmill, he got competitive again because he was able to beat his record. So that was good. But just doing this, you can tell he's not happy. And once it's done, he's laughing again. And after this, we went to dinner to close out the day, and I did order the same thing he ordered. So I learned something. On this one, I don't know if you can see it. It's somewhat grainy. This is at ISO 20,000. And I'll go into this a bit later. It's just, this is not an ideal point to take a photo because the light isn't good, the setting isn't great, but it doesn't matter because it's part of the story. It has to be in there. I'd rather have a photo that's not 100% technically perfect than sacrifice a moment because it's not perfect. So my takeaways from photographing Michael are try to be prepared, try to have an idea. You always think you're ready if you go into something like this. It's going to be different. Afterwards, you're much, much smarter. So why do I photograph this? Why do I go to somebody's home, photograph somebody who is different, who lives in a way we're not really familiar with? I do it for me. I do it because at some point I realized that my motivation is intrinsic. I want to do photos that satisfy me. I'm on Instagram. I post probably way too much on Instagram, so I can't fully say that I don't care about other people's opinions, but the motivation, the drive, is my internal satisfaction. Do tools matter? To come back to the book comparison, if you read a book by your favorite author, do you think, oh, they must have had a great computer and perfect software to write this? I hope not. I hope you don't think that. That's why I didn't bring a list of what equipment I use. That's why I didn't bring my equipment to show. If you want to see good equipment, there's tons of them out there. I use full-frame cameras and just a wide range of lenses. I probably have more lenses than I should have. I bought them all here, so that's probably why B&H invited me to speak here, because it reached that level. How did I figure it out that I want to do visual storytelling? I was fairly unhappy with my photography at some point. At that point, probably everybody hits that. It's just you do photos and they're kind of good, but there's nothing. You don't have your soul in them. You don't have your vision and your voice in them. And I figured out that I can do that with visual storytelling. I can follow a story I'm interested in. I can learn on a human level, and I can show something that others usually don't see. Going back to the tools kind of do matter. I'm saying they don't matter because it's not about how good they are. It's more about your vision and what you do with them. But sometimes you need a good camera and a good lens. Don't expect to take low light photos on a cell phone. Now you can, but yeah, that's my point. That goes my point. And to underpin even more why I wasn't happy with my photography before visual storytelling is this is what I thought was good. Every fad out there, urban exploration and HDR. This is when I thought I was a street photographer. It's a street, it's a photo, I'm a street photographer. And I had fun with white borders. I have a lot of photos with white vignettes. So it's very simple. I did that story on Michael, and I realized this is what I'm doing from now on. I'm a storyteller, right? That's how it works. You figure something out, and then it goes straight there. No. I still do pretty pictures. I try to instill a little bit of storytelling in my pretty pictures, but it's not that I only do storytelling anymore right now. So I still do pretty pictures. I don't use HDR. I try to look at more at a feeling than at a prowess of, hey, look, I know how to use my camera. That being said, I do daytime long exposures where I use a lot of equipment. To come back to why do I do visual storytelling? Every photo we make, every photo we show, every reaction we get works on an emotional level for us, or should work on an emotional level for us. And because I'm a guy and I don't know how to talk about emotions or how to deal with emotions, I try to put them into something quantifiable. So emotion is a currency. And I have to decide, how do I spend my currency? Where do I invest it? This ties back to, what's my motivation? It's where do I get my satisfaction from? Do I get my satisfaction from a job well done, or from 5,000 likes on Instagram? I don't know how that feels. I never got 5,000 likes, but it's figuring out what's important to me and sticking to that. That's what helped me find my voice. This is, and if I take a dig at any other types of photography, it's just my personal opinion, don't take it personally. But I see a lot of street photography, or a lot of photography of homeless. And I don't think, or most of those photos I see are not really about homeless people, about the condition. They're more of, oh, look, there's somebody sitting there with a funny sign. And coming back to this, emotional currency is limited. Decide on how you want to spend your emotions, your time, your skills, your everything when you take photos. When photographing sensitive topics, or intimate, very close situations, like when I'm photographing Michael when he's getting ready for school, I saw him washing himself, so I'm not taking a photo of that, because I don't. But how do you make those decisions? And even before that is when not to stop photographing. There's always that conversation in our brain going, should I take this photo? Should I not take this photo? If I don't take it, there's something missing. If I do take it, oh, I just overstepped the line. I like to break it down to a couple of technical things. It's when not to stop photographing is when not to stop when you think the light isn't good, or when you think the composition isn't good. In the context of a story, you better have the moment than miss it because it's not perfect. Don't sacrifice the moment of perfection, and we can get away with technical mistakes. Look at the photos of the masters. Look at old street photography. They're usually somewhat out of focus. They're either under or overexposed. They're still great photos. We can get away with technical mistakes if it's meaningful. If it's not meaningful and it's technically so-so, nah, you should take it. So this photo is technically not necessarily perfect. I would like to have more light. I don't see Dylan's face. I had to use f1.8, I believe, so the depth of field is not really there. I probably should have focused on Dylan's mom, on Melissa, to get the photo better. It doesn't really matter. She's reading a book to her kid in bed. That's much more important than, light was so-so. Or this one, I cut off his feet. He's jumping, he's having fun, I cut off his feet. Even the second row, I cut off their feet. How do you do that? But I think it's an interesting and meaningful photo in that moment. They were having a dance after a 5K run. Here is, I jumped ahead of it a little bit before. When do you stop photographing? When should you not take the photo? Is usually when you get that doubt, is this good, is this bad? Don't take the photo. When you don't take the photo, when you make that decision, make it obvious. What I usually do is I turn my camera away so everybody in the room sees I'm not taking that photo. In some cases, I have left the room because there's something going on that no one needs to see. We all know it happens, but no one needs to see it. And if the story really does not need those photos, then don't take them. It sounds so easy, but sometimes you don't know. And don't forget that you're not photographing objects, you're photographing people. How does the person feel that I'm photographing? How would I feel if I were in that person's shoes? And delete. That's why I'm not going to show you any photos of when to stop photographing, because I deleted all of them. But then there are the tough moments. Just to make the explanation more difficult, there's some clear ones where you should photograph, there's some where you should not photograph, and then there's a gray zone. This photo is from a wedding, and I spoke with the bride. She's okay that we show it here. The importance of the moment is key. It ties back to what I had on the previous slide. Does the story need this? Are you depicting something that's not flattering? That goes into respect and personal zone, I think. And I think this one is key to me, is were you supposed to see it? If somebody drops their pants, that's a great video for America's Funniest Videos, but it's not necessarily a good photo in a story about somebody's condition. In this case, I took the photo. It was during the ceremony, the beginning of the ceremony of the wedding. I'm very, very careful to photograph everything. And sometimes I don't really realize what's happening because I'm trying to photograph it. I'm not waiting to see, oh, this is interesting, and then I take a photo, because by then it's gone. The bride's mom had passed, I think, 8 months before the wedding. And they had a chair for her mom in the front of the ceremony place, so right in front of the altar. And she walked down alone and put flowers on the chair for her mom. And I took the photo. Once I started editing the photos, I had that in the back of my head. It's just, should I really? And I asked myself, was I supposed to see it? Yes, that was a very clear moment when they did that. And is it significant? Yes, it's significant. So I decided to keep the photo. I sent the gallery to the couple, and Kaylee, the bride, then wrote me thanking me for taking the photo, because it's a very important moment to her. Good. Special Olympics. The photo of Michael was my introduction to Special Olympics. I had no idea who or what Special Olympics is. When I took those photos, I published them on Facebook. Somebody from Special Olympics New Jersey saw that, sent an email to Special Olympics North America saying, hey, look at this. They wrote me thanking me for the photos and for those epiphanies of, and I wrote it in there. It's just, I thought you shouldn't give them glue and scissors. And they appreciated that change in awareness and in understanding. And then Special Olympics asked me if I would want to volunteer for them. In 2015, I started volunteering for Special Olympics New Jersey, which has led to Special Olympics USA Games in Seattle 2 years ago and the World Games in Abu Dhabi a year ago. So if anyone asks me, why do you photograph Special Olympics, it's just a coincidence that I started doing it. Once I got exposed to Special Olympics, I realized how much I like their mission, how much I like being around people with intellectual disabilities, how much I can learn about myself. If you wonder how do you find your theme for visual storytelling, think about what makes you happy. Think about what's important to you. Perhaps there's some projects in your church. Perhaps there's something in an animal shelter. Perhaps there's something, perhaps you don't have any preferences. Go to volunteermatch.org, I believe it is. Volunteermatch.org and pointsoflight.org. Those are volunteer websites where they publish volunteering opportunities. So Special Olympics. This, you saw this photo. This is part of the invite, and I had it on the screens before for a half hour, so you probably saw it. This is at a fundraising event. It's the plane pull. This is in Newark Airport. I think you can see the Bayonne Bridge under the wing and the plane landing. When I get to events, what I try to do is I try to set the stage, try to show what's going on. I mean, at the plane pull, I have to show a plane that's soon to be pulled, but also the markers on how do people know when it's been pulled those 10 feet. How are they told when it's done? Who's there? Who's part of the volunteer corps? And then I have to have a photo of actually somebody pulling a plane. But how many of these photos can I possibly show before we fall asleep? So I try to find other things. I like to work with wide-angle lenses. I'd like to get this expression. Standing alone, this image, you probably wouldn't know exactly what it is, but in the context of the photos I've shown before, you know what this is. I also try to take photos that are somewhat, or can be used editorial for Special Olympics, so they can use this on their website or communications materials, so no faces or no recognizable faces and lots of negative space. And sometimes I want faces. He probably asked me and I couldn't say no. Then I try to find angles that are somewhat interesting. Standing under an airplane that moves, even if it's just 2 miles an hour or even less than that because it's being pulled, is so weird. It's just so weird. And then I look at spectators. There's usually family there, so I try to photograph family. This was at a softball game. Same here, set the stage, show what's going on. And then I like to take photos of the interactions. I think that's more interesting, or there's more to tell in here than here. I like to go into the dugout and take photos of the team waiting there. I'm usually in there for about a minute, and I take photos of 10, 12 people. And during warm-ups, not during gameplay, I do get out on the pitch and take photos of the warm-up pitches or the catches. And also with an organization like Special Olympics that is so dependent on volunteers, is what are the volunteers doing? With Special Olympics events, and we have Kevin here who also photographs Special Olympics events, you're jumping from sports to sports to sports, trying to find something to photograph. And there's so much to photograph, and you're figuring out, okay, what of this can I photograph? How often do you get to an event knowing what you want to photograph, but it's not going to be that in the end? That seems to happen every event. So when I get to the track, I see there's walker and wheelchair races. And so I take a wide-angle photo from the bleachers, step onto the track. I like to show the whole race. I missed that one. Oops. This is as they getting to the start line, and this is at the finish line where he changes from his walker back to the wheelchair. And as I'm ready to leave to the next competition, I see him, and I'm just, ooh, this is interesting. I take a photo. It's at the end of the race when he gets a sip of water. And then I see his parents approach him as they help him out of the wheelchair, change from his racing wheelchair to the proper one. And Dad helping with shoes. And I spent probably 3 minutes there. I talked to him. I asked some questions about the wheelchair because that's the most obvious end that I have to start a conversation. And after 3 minutes or so, I left because I had to go to finally to the other spot that I had planned to go to. I saw him about 6 months later at the dinner, and he approached me and thanked me for taking those photos. Thanked me for taking the time to talk to him. And as much as I had said before, my motivation is intrinsic. I want to take photos because I want to take them, because I feel good about them. Having this kind of feedback of somebody you photographed thanking you for taking your time is just invaluable. That's priceless. I cannot put a value on it. I have received on some other projects that I'm not showing today, I have received feedback from the parents thanking me for giving their children self-esteem, because my reaction was, what did I do? And it's because I took time to talk to them, to be with them, and I took interest in them. I made their day better, which made me realize that every single interaction that we have is incredibly invaluable. It's every single moment that I talk to somebody, I can learn something, I can share something. It doesn't have to be a teacher-student moment to teach something. It can be a very simple interaction where I learn something, where I share something, which comes back to why do I really like doing this? Coming back to tools, I don't have those big white lenses that I need to do sports photography. So what do? I take a 24 millimeter and I stand on the track on the start line and take photos like this. So even if you don't have the tools you think you need, use the tools you do have to do something different. You may get a different angle. You may get kicked off the track. That may happen too, but this was this January, floor hockey. I like to show the action. I like to show the protagonists. It doesn't help even in color when a team in black shirts plays a team in black shirts. That white stripe here doesn't do enough in terms of separation. One of the things I learned, Special Olympics competitions are hard. They're tough. You see the stick in the neck, they're going for it. I like to get a bit closer to show again what's happening, not just on the field. Then at some point I get bored with all the action and I try to do panning. And this is always the fun part, the winning. These are opposing coaches. The one to the right just won gold, the one to the left just won silver. He didn't lose gold, he won silver, you can tell that. And I'm not always the only one who gets bored at those events. This comes back to when not to take photos, or if something's happening you shouldn't photograph, what do you do? Player from the opposing team was down, twisted an ankle if I remember correctly. So I could be taking photos of coaches going out and trying to carry him out of the field, or I could take a photo of the opposing team who's kneeling and waiting for him to be cleared. Those are conscious decisions that you have to make when you photograph something. Let me rephrase that. If you photograph somebody, you have to make decisions. What's the right thing, what's not? This was also one of those. He was crying because he has been subbed, so he was crying. I did not take photos of him crying. But once the coach got in and the other coach put her hand on his shoulder, this photo all of a sudden becomes about somebody giving comfort and not somebody crying. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep these photos. I took them as it happened. The guy in the glasses was very sad. He was crying that they lost the gold medal game. So his teammate went in, consoled him, and his coach did the same. And this photo is when I knew I was okay to show it. He's okay. He's fine. This was as he is in line waiting for the medals. These are always the great moments. It's sometimes tempting at sports events to stop once the game is over. I think the fun happens afterwards. And I like the simple transactions that happen. It's just the referee helping a player with his face mask. This is almost a year ago, exactly a year ago, March 2019, the Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I was there for 10 days. I photographed 15 different sports in 10 different venues in 2 different cities. There were 2 ceremonies. I took about 16,000 photos. According to my Fitbit, I walked about 70 miles with equipment on my back. And my MPG, my miles per granola bar, are about 4 or 5, so you know how many granola bars I eat. The challenge with games of this magnitude is that there's so much going on. There is barely any time to do what I would call a novel. The story that starts and has a middle and an end and a twist perhaps somewhere. On events like this, I probably do more short stories than novels, some really quick short ones. This is on one of the 6, I believe, if I remember correctly, 6 buses that brought the US delegation to the opening ceremony. That big button on his chest, the guy standing, that was given to him by ESPN. So ESPN cameras knew who to focus on because they had backstories prepared for them. Him and I together have 11 perfect games in bowling. He has 11, I have none. This is the opening ceremony. Frustrating for a photographer. We were set in one zone, in one sector, and we were not allowed to move. So I sit there and see people walk in. This is, I believe, at 200 millimeter. So, but I'm the guy who brings the fisheye. So, yeah, this is know what to do with the limitation. I could have been here. Yeah, I was complaining that I don't have the 400 and I'm not standing down there with everybody else, but I have the fisheye. So let's do this. I photographed volleyball, which is my personal nemesis. I suck at photographing volleyball. So I focused on family in the stands. Or on the little moments before play happens. Once play happens, I'm overwhelmed. I realized quickly that I cannot properly follow the whole team or a couple of athletes for all the games because I was scheduled to be in a different spot every 2 or 3 hours, more or less. So I focused on the little short stories. If you're taking photos, ever tried taking photos in a bowling alley? The light is not ideal. You usually photograph people from the back, which is not ideal either. So I try to make best use of the lights we have. I use the lights as lines. Median. Thank you. If there's any wording somewhere, I try to use it. This is Brianna, tennis player from Pennsylvania. And once in a while, I have some time to follow a story. This is Haley from Texas. You can't tell, she lost her game. She had a lot of fun. She really didn't care. This is the opponent who beat her, and after that, who cares if you lose a tennis match if you get a kiss from mom afterwards? I forget how much weight that is, but you see how the bar bends? One of the challenges with the venues is to the left, that bright part, that's a huge LED screen. You see it here. They're in front of an LED screen. Have you ever taken photos of LED screens? You get those wonderful lines. So when I get there, I take my first photo thinking of the settings that I want, and I see those lines. This is at about 800 of a second, where I would feel I'm kind of safe with his movement. But this is just not good. So I had to photograph the event at 1/160th of a second, which is too slow for my own comfort, but it's what you need to do to have which background is worse? Track and field, which was in Dubai. Some of the athletes have their own starting blocks. And this is just a little quick little short story I was able to do on him. His start, he wins, and then a celebration with his opponent. Always good to have family in, to show the whole story, to show what the other participants. And here you can see how the shadows are coming in. The sun is slowly setting. It's setting behind the stands, which means for the short races, the athletes are starting in the sun, but the track is in the shadow. So if you don't pay attention to what you're doing, you get, as soon as they started, they're dark. So that's one of the situations when it's good to know how a camera works and how you have to compensate for the exposure. These are straight out of camera unedited. It's just so I can show the difference there. And as the sun was setting, there was one sliver of light coming across the finish line. And I figured if somebody steps into that sliver of light, that's going to be a great photo. I stand there and I see the first athlete coming in, and this is just 2 photos and to show how much of a difference this makes. This is the unedited, and this is the edit, and I did not forget about you, Tay. You will get it. This, to me, is showing again how important it is to understand what's going on, to have a clear plan of what you want to do, but to have a clear understanding that it's not going to work out as you planned it. The guy before with his own starting block, well, you have runners in no shoes. This is another one of those photos that, if you look closely, the guy in the middle, he's out of focus. Anyone could argue that's not a good photo because he's out of focus. I think in terms of importance, this is a good photo, especially because this is back in the athlete zone where I was not supposed to be, but they wanted me there, so there was a little of a spat between the team and security afterwards. And I try to do story, or try to follow a team. This is a player from the Arizona basketball team. This is during training camp in September 18 in Delaware, where I had the opportunity to photograph them. This is during training camp, doing skills and drills. I noticed here, it's the good thing about photographing somebody before they compete, you get to see certain things that may or may not help. I saw that the guy with the ball, he sweats a lot. So I was hoping to get some expressive photos of him later on. Now this is back in Abu Dhabi, March 2019. By now they know me, so they know that if I show up with the camera, they don't have to fear me. The lady and the guy to the right, that's mother and son. You don't see that too often, mother and son playing together in a team. And as you saw before with floor hockey, they go for it. This was fairly difficult to photograph because there was just one zone where we were allowed to be in. So I tried to focus on other things. This is Julie Foudy interviewing mother and son for ESPN. So I take advantage of the lights that the camera team has there because it's fairly dark in there. That's the guy from before who sweats. That's a nice description of somebody, sorry. The tagline for the games were meet the determined. And I think that is pretty accurate. This is 2 different. They lost the game to Ivory Coast, but there's still time for a team photo. And I also tried to follow them during closing ceremonies, which was quite mayhem. What they do during the games, all the athletes, they exchange pins. They have country pins. What they do at the closing ceremony, what I didn't know, is they exchange anything that's labeled with a country. So if I saw shirts, I saw pants being swapped, I saw shoes being swapped. And this is as I'm standing at the gate to the stadium for the closing ceremony, and she walked up to me, showed me her medal. I took the photo, and she walked away. So to the swapping, first, it's not a Special Olympics party until there's a conga line. So the guy in front wearing the USA cap, he's not from the USA. He's wearing an Austria shirt, according to my brother, who was there for Special Olympics Austria, which is a coincidence. He's not on the Austrian team either. He's wearing a dress, so I assume he is from somewhere in the Middle East, unless he got that from somebody else as well. And this was pretty much the last photo I took at the World Games of Renee. She's an equestrian from Florida, the youngest participant of the US delegation, as she was sitting there waiting for the fireworks to start. Let's switch to Dylan. I've often been asked, how do I find my stories? How do I know who to photograph, where to go? As you saw with Special Olympics, coincidence. As you will see with Dylan, is coincidence, friend of a friend. Thank you, Tay. That's the second mention today. Tay wanted to hire me to take a family photo of her coworker. And her coworker has, her child Dylan, has a degenerative disease called metachromatic leukodystrophy, which is a terminal disease. And my answer was, well, I'll gladly take your money and take a family photo, but I'm not going to do that. I want to give them something of value, something more substance. I photographed, before Dylan, I photographed a dear friend who passed from cancer. Why do I keep photographing children who have diseases that they're probably not going to beat? And the answer is, I keep seeing, even within those settings, I keep seeing so much love, so much tenderness, so much honest, genuine affection. And I feel that with my photography, I get to give them something of value. Before I took a photo, the first time we met, Melissa, Dylan's mom, and I did not take a single photo. I decided, and I try to do it this way when I start something this delicate, something that's so intimate. Let's meet first, let's talk, and I'm not taking a photo. And that tells me and tells them, I compared it, I told it to Melissa, and I think it's just, the first meeting is like dogs sniffing each other's butts. Let's figure each other out. Let's see if we can gel or not. Because if I'm there sticking my camera in your face during some of your vulnerable moments, it's probably beneficial if we kind of like each other. And the way I want to start is set the scene. Dylan he just turned 11, right? He turned 11. This photo was when he was 9, shortly before turning 10. his room, his stuffed animals, his books. I visited him at home on 3 different days. I went to 2 or 3 different fundraisers to take photos. So even though I would like to call it a day in the life of, it's more like 6 days over 3 months in the life of. But that doesn't sound as good. And then all of a sudden, you don't see just regular children's things. You see diapers, syringes and tubes in front of the toaster oven. That's not a regular household. And in these situations, it's a small, dark room. There's not much space to move. There's not much light. And pretty much every scene is meaningful. I photographed a lot. But I also tried to see what's happening in terms of light. This happened the first day for about 3 minutes, that the light came in through the skylight, the sun came in through the skylight, and Dad stood there. I tried to take photos of Mom there the next days. It never happened again. Also, the decisions, the knowing how you have to light mist or fog or steam so you can see it. It has to be backlit. So you know where you have to be to take the photos. How do you show that somebody doesn't walk without being too obvious about showing somebody being carried or a wheelchair? And I thought this was what they use with all the stuffed animals is they use him to prop him up. So because he cannot control his body. So if you put him on a ledge, he'll slide off. So they use the stuffed animals to prop him up. I still think this is my favorite photo. This is Dad, Mike, carrying Dylan down to the living room so they can get ready to go to school. Melissa had cleared with the school that I could go there and take photos. I had to be careful with not taking photos of other kids or not showing other kids. And this is something that anyone with a kid with special needs will know. The kids are in the hallways when there are no other kids, because they usually cannot stick to proper schedules. They get in late, they have to leave early. So this is a photo that is very, very meaningful to somebody with a special needs child. One of his constant gadgets that he has with him is this pulse and blood oxygen meter. Dylan and one of his nurses waiting for Mike to pick him up to go home for lunch. And I find it very poignant, well, there comes the New Jersey thing again. I find it very interesting that they're sitting in front of the school's team jerseys, sports jerseys. This is a shaker vest that is actuated through air to loosen the phlegm in his lungs. And back to what I said before, the love and tenderness I see in these situations is incredible. Also something you never wish for a kid to be in his backpack or in somebody's backpack that's with him all the time is a stethoscope. As Dad was giving him a haircut, you see the pulse meter on his finger. Something was not right with the pulse, so the nurse just started listening to his heartbeat. This is how Dylan gets a bath. He is strapped into that chair, and the nurse gives him the bath. But then those incredible, meaningful moments. And it's very impressive also how friends and family and the community and everybody steps up and is inclusive of him. This is at a 5K run, raising funds for the foundation, for the Rock On Foundation. He's being, you see the tube, he's receiving his nutrition right there through the tube that goes straight into his stomach. And no one seems to care. That's Dylan. So the race starts. I try taking photos of, start taking photos of the race. And as I'm here taking photos of the winners, the finishers, he's the winner, but all the finishers, I see some commotion. Mike and the nurse realized that something's wrong with his oxygen levels. This was about exactly a year ago. Dylan was in the hospital. He went to the hospital with a flu. He was in the emergency care unit for 3 months. That was, so he had, since then he has a track, which is a tube into his lungs that has to be attached to a ventilator. So he cannot always breathe on his own anymore. So I'm there and I see commotion. So they go back to the car, hook him up. And everything's fine. The key to me to be able to document somebody like Dylan, family like Mike and Melissa and Dylan, is to be respectful and to understand that something very, very special is happening, and to understand that my photography is special to them as well, because I'm documenting them in a way that they don't see. Any questions? Weddings. Now I'm moving to something where all of a sudden I need a shot list and I need to know what's going on and I have to be directing, which doesn't come very natural to me. I have the benefit of mostly being a second photographer with Alicia. Thanks, Alicia. She lets me pretty much do whatever I want to do. Well, not everything, but but I think I bring the same sensitivity to weddings that I do to Dylan. I try to see it through the couple's eyes. As much as I'm going to ruin my wedding business now. I don't really care about those post-family photos. I understand they're important. I understand they're mementos. But that's not where my passion is. I like photographing rings, but that's not where my passion is. I try to capture what's important to the couple. In this case, the location. That's a pretty darn good location. This is the groom and the groomsmen. After they're ready, they walk from the this is in the hotel hallway, ready to go to the reception. I try this photo at every single wedding. It happened once so far. It's just the way he is in the light. This is a lot of the vows, a lot of the speeches nowadays at weddings are read off of cell phones, which just looks like somebody is there staring in their phone and texting. I get it, it's convenient, I just don't like it. This groom not only wrote it down, he also did a good job at redacting it. And also, any wedding that has a 12-year Macallan and not Fireball in there, I don't like them. Usually the bride is carrying the bouquet all day, or most part of the day. Some of those bouquets are heavy. And I think that the feeling, the tactile feeling of holding the bouquet all day is something that the brides really remember. And having a photo of that is something I make a point of, having a photo of the bride holding the bouquet. Usually I go in a bit closer to have really the fingers in. And sometimes you cannot direct. This happens. You have to let it come to you. And if you look at the groomsmen's reactions, I guess that happens. During the ceremony, I try to, yes, I want that big shot of the couple in front of the altar or of the frame with the flowers and all that stuff. But seeing what happens in the audience is more interesting to me. These are the groom's sister-in-law and brother, I believe. She's holding a Bible. She was reading from it afterwards. And you see the parents in the background holding hands. If you do bring a barber to your wedding to get ready, you have to have a photo of it. This was also great. One of the things I do remember vividly is on the way out, they had big baskets full of White Castle sliders for everybody going home. And yeah, sometimes you have the post photos, but you have to know how to do this. You have to know that you need a shorter, slower shutter speed to get the drops moving a bit. You have to know where to put the light. And if the couple wants it, they want it. Did I have time to put the rain cover on my camera? No. But luckily it's not my light in the background, so I didn't have to worry about the light. And sometimes you have to embrace the chaos. To make this a proper, clean wedding photo, preparation photo, I should have cleaned up the desk. I should have gotten the videographer out of it. But this is, to me, the story of that preparation. I wouldn't call it mayhem, but there's a lot going on. And if you've been to a wedding, you know there's a lot of waiting. Sometimes you get somebody who doesn't care about the ceremony, which makes the photo. And this is in between two photo setups. Bride and groom get something to drink while Alicia is carrying the bride's dress, and I'm taking photos. And I'm sure that they remember this. And this, to me, is a more meaningful photo than the post one. This is, what's it called, the hairpiece for the bride's veil. Every wedding, I see somebody standing on the veil, so the bride gets yanked. So every bride remembers this part. Quick moment before they walk into the reception, sneak around and take some photos. And this party's almost over. They had pizza delivered to the ceremony. You cannot direct this. These are weddings I did as a second photographer. This one I did as a main photographer. This is the bride's brother and her son watching TV as she is getting ready. Then mailman comes, delivers a package the kid has been waiting for weeks. There was a present in there. So now all of a sudden everybody has to assemble whatever was in that package while the bride is getting her hair done in the background. Groom comes home, groom, fiancé. I think he approves of the hair. Then I follow him as he irons his shirt. And what I really, really loved about this wedding is they got ready together. Bride and groom and the kids. So once in a while I step out of the room, I give them some freedom. They know I'm there, but they know they don't have to look at me. Emmy, the girl, came in and wanted to twirl around in her dress, so they twirled. I'm so used to ceremonies in churches that go 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. This was 5 minutes. I almost missed it. Hulk was there, so that's somebody was looking at. And this was from going from town hall to the local restaurant to have a few drinks to go to dinner afterwards. And I just liked this, just walking into that local pub in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And I don't think anyone expected a bridal party to come in. Photos during dinner or while people are eating are notoriously awful, with the exception of kids and sweets. And this is Kaylee again. Kaylee with her dad right now. She wanted to walk down alone. This is, remember this from before, where she put down the flowers on her mother's chair. I made it a point to take a photo of this. This goes through all my checklists. Is this, am I supposed to see this? Was this on purpose? Is it meaningful? I like the details in hands more than the big photos. Also trying to show the guests at the wedding, because that's a big part of the party. The couple invited them for a reason. They want to have them there. What they did, what I found really nice, is they passed the rings around the audience so they could all look at the rings, which gave me a quick breather to take some other photos, so that was good. One of the very few post photos we took that day. It was very fitting. It's the whole day was somewhat rainy, overcast. After the ceremony, it just opened up and beautiful sunset and yeah, cupcakes and love. Yeah. Any questions? 2 weddings. So this is another project where I try to instill storytelling into a corporate environment. This is for a company that does inspections of buildings. This was a pretty nice inspection of the Flatiron building with Alexis and I. Thank you very much for helping. That was the hottest day ever. So we started at 7 a.m., I believe, till 6 p.m. or something like that. That was a long day. Trying to show, no, let's go here. Trying to tell a story about something as abstract as somebody inspecting a building, even though this is in a very spectacular setting, it's not just about people doing the inspection. I started out a couple of weeks before at their office, taking photos of them doing meetings, discussing what to do. This was the week before the inspection, where the riggers were there setting up all the ropes that they need to set up. And this is the day off, so we try to take a lot of photos of the details of preparation, safety, briefing. One of the unique things about this company, Kani, is that half of their staff is female. You don't have that many female building inspectors, engineers and architects in this business. I don't know if this is a photo I took or Alexis took. I think this is one of yours. Isn't mine? I think it's one of yours. So in this set, there's some photos of Alexis, there's some of mine. This is the rigger telling them how safety works. Not that they haven't heard it before. Walkie-talkies, camera, everything is roped in, tied in. This is the rigger getting ready up on that ledge on the Flatiron building. This is what that looks like from below. They have to, because the ledge goes out 5 feet wider than the building as such, they have to go down to the 22nd floor and tie into this rope so they're closer to the facade, so they actually do get to see the facade. And our goal here was to document their staff at work. One of the benefits of doing inspections this way, instead of doing it on scaffolding, is that they don't have to close down the sidewalk, they don't have to put up scaffolding, which is trying to show it here, as while Elise is getting down, there's just people walking past. And after every single one is down, the riggers have to pull the ropes up again. That's a good workout. Let's just pull 600 feet of ropes up. Yeah. This is one of the money shots. I mean, it's just pretty spectacular. Seeing Broadway, Fifth Avenue, and the Flatiron Building. And this is the other money shot, in my opinion, which is not as spectacular, but it shows the benefit of doing inspection this way. If you look closely, you see three people in the wall here. While life is going on, there's no scaffolding, no closed sidewalk. And this is the less spectacular work, but that goes to show what this company does, which the brief was show what we do, make or humanize the business. It's, yeah, sure, we go down on ropes and big buildings, but what's all the nitty-gritty in it? What's all the back end of it? This is going to be used for website, communications materials. This is when you do a restoration in a New York City building, a building that's under landmark protection, you have to do the restoration to original spec. So if you see somewhere a brighter spot somewhere in a building, that's probably been restored to original spec. There's a lot of this mundane measuring. This is a copper plane that has been replaced. This is the new one. And it's a reminder that's where I take photos. This is the Trinity building, and these are some gargoyles. Dragons or gargoyles? I think it's gargoyles. Some faces. You see a new one in the front. That's new copper. The old ones are in the back. And you can see them here. If you look all the way at the top. It's up here. So if you see the care that goes into, the care and the work that goes into restoring objects that as a regular pedestrian you don't see, that's pretty impressive. And this goes back to just showing the regular daily work in an office, as how do I tell their story on what they do. I mean, we all want to see that money shot of Henry in the ropes with Fifth Avenue and Broadway, but this is as much part of it as well. The engineer's stamp of approval. And photographing something like this and trying to tell a story is somewhat more difficult, somewhat more abstract than photographing Special Olympics or Dylan, because this is all so normal, also trivial, and this has no proper beginning or middle or end. So it's an interesting challenge, and also this type of storytelling has a much tighter script, much tighter, I wouldn't call it storyboard, but expectations on what kind of photos are necessary. So some projects that you will do as a visual storyteller are free-flowing, let it come to you, see what happens, see what's going on. Some you have to be very careful on what to do and very, very planned. So how has visual storytelling affected me as a photographer? As a photographer, it has taught me to put a lot of value into preparation, into skills, and into the ability to be overwhelmed by when you're photographing something, because it's going to be different. It's not going to be what you expected. It helped me trust my fundamentals, helped me trust my skills to such a level that I can let go of the conscious part and just photograph what's happening. Just see is the wrong word. It's not about what I see, but it's about what I feel. So when I'm at a photographing Dylan, I don't have to think about, I need to do this setting, I need to put that lens on, and I have to move. No, that's all done. That's because I've done it so often. It's all ingrained. I can focus on what I feel. I have also, I don't know if you've noticed, if anyone follows me on Instagram or Facebook, when I post something, usually I post the settings, because I really don't care about the settings. Anyone can go out, copy my settings, go out with the same camera I use. It's going to be a different photo. I think what really makes a photo different or special is the vision and is the feeling you have, and not the technical setting. It can help, but how has this affected me as a human being? Building on what I just said with the settings is I have become very comfortable with sharing. If somebody asks me how I did something, I don't have to protect it. I don't have anything to gain by keeping my settings secret. I have learned that every single interaction is meaningful. I have learned to be respectful, to also be able to demand respect. And wise words, finally, and they're not by me. This is by Chuck Close. The advice I like to give young artists, or really anybody who'll listen to me, is not to wait around for inspiration. Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. If you wait around for the clouds to part and a bolt of lightning to strike you in the brain, you are not going to make an awful lot of work. All the best ideas come out of the process. They come out of the work itself. Things occur to you. If you're sitting around trying to dream up a great art idea, you can sit there a long time before anything happens. But if you just get to work, something will occur to you, and something else will occur to you, and something else that you reject will push you in another direction. Inspiration is absolutely unnecessary and somehow deceptive. You feel like you need this great idea before you can get down to work, and I think that's almost never the case. Or more wise words, and this is something I have learned. Be brave enough to suck at something new. Try something. Be honest about the result. Improve on it. And because pictures are worth more than 1,000 words, thank you, everybody.